Everyone knows that 3.8 Genshin banners are just around the corner, featuring Scaramouche, aka the Wanderer, and Kokomi, as well as their respective weapons. And you might wonder, should you pull on those banners? Today I'll be ranking these banners from a scale of 1 to 10 and talking about the benefits on pulling for their respective characters. So hopefully you'll have a more clear decision on if you want to spend your wishes or not. So for the second phase of 3.8, we're going to have Wanderer as our first banner. Now if we actually take a look at it, it has pretty decent characters. Wanderer is a pretty strong animal main DPS that can be very versatile in his playstyles. You can play him as an animal driver for reaction teams or even go into a fully main DPS build. You can build teams around his main DPS role using characters like Bennett, Zhongli. Even Thoma is pretty decent because he offers that 15% normal and charge attack damage bonus, as well as a shield if you don't have Zhongli, for example. On the other hand, Farazan is also one of the characters that really work well with Wanderer, as she provides very good and strong bonuses to animal damage and animal res shred, which is very nice since she is presented on the same banner if you don't already have her, or if you just want some extra constellations on her. Wanderer's elemental skill provides him with an ability of flight, which can be really important in exploration. Overall, a Wanderer scores a nice 7.5 out of 10 ranking for this banner. Now let us look at the 4 stars that are present on his banner. Yanfei is probably one of the worst characters on this banner. Now, not to say that she's bad, because Yanfei is a pretty good Pyro Catalyst main DPS. The problem is, you are already wishing for Wanderer, who is a main DPS Catalyst user. So I would just not recommend using Yanfei if you are going for Wanderer. Yanfei scores a 3.5 as a 4 star on this banner. On the other hand, we have Rosaria. Rosaria is a pretty good cryo enabler and support, as she can apply cryo very nicely. She can do pretty decent damage, and it can be used in freeze teams or even melt teams very efficiently, ranking around 5 out of 10. And lastly, we have Farazan, which is going to be the most important 4 star for this banner. Overall, at C0, she can be a very nice 6.5 out of 10. As she's a pretty niche unit for only animal damage dealers, but her power definitely increases at C6. Overall, for the 4 stars, we have an average of a 5.5. They're not great, they're not bad. The real main focus is going to be Farazan and Rosaria, Yanfei being the lesser good one. So overall, this is a very decent banner. If you are aiming for constellations, his C1 is definitely not a great one, only increasing your attack speed by 10% and a little bit of damage from his dash while he is in his E stance, which isn't really that important. His C2, on the other hand, can be really strong, as it increases your burst damage for up to 200%. This is the constellation that I would go for if you pulled C0 Wanderer on the previous banners and you want to increase his power overall a little bit more. C3 is of course just an increase in his burst level, which is pretty nice, especially paired with his second constellation. His C4 triggers one of the 3 other elemental buffs that you have not infused in when casting your elemental skill, which isn't a big thing considering this is his 4th constellation. C5 is increasing a little bit of his elemental skill, which is pretty decent, and his C6 being a pretty decent C6 then boosts his damage through the roof, but I'm not advising anyone to go for C6, as his constellations from 3rd to 5th are not that good. You can go up to his C2 or C6. Other constellations aren't that good. So, what is the final decision for Wanderer? I would say this is a 7 out of 10 banner, as the 5 star is pretty decent and the 4 stars are pretty good as well. And if you already have them and you want to get more Farazan constellations or constellations on Wanderer, second banner that we're going to be having is Sangonomiya Kokomi, which is going to be a pretty much worse banner than the Wanderer's one. Kokomi's place in the meta has definitely not been that good. She is a Hydro enabler, she applies Hydro in a pretty large AoE using her elemental skill. This places her pretty nicely in any bloom related team, freeze teams, as well as she's pretty good at freezing the enemies. I would give 4 out of 10 for Kokomi. Unfortunately, she's not that good. The thing is, I'm playing Nilu teams using Barbara and she plays pretty nicely anyway. Overall, Kokomi's constellations aren't that good as they provide really little increase to her base kit. Her C1 increases her DPS a little bit, dealing an extra 30% of her max HP as Hydro damage on her final attack of the normal attack string, which isn't really that great as Kokomi is mainly used as a healer and a Hydro enabler, not a main DPS. Her second constellation focuses on healing and increases her healing to characters with less than 50% HP, which is a decent constellation, but the problem is that she already heals far more than enough as you'll be just overhealing your characters. C3 is an increase to her burst, which doesn't really do much, so it's a pretty much skip constellation as well. Her C4 grants her a little bit of attack speed and a little bit of energy restoration every hit that she makes in burst, which is again not really a big DPS increase. Constellation 5 gives a increase to her elemental skill, which is also not really great as her jellyfish does not deal a lot of damage and it heals already plentiful enough. Her C6 is probably one of the worst constellation 6s in the game as it only gives 40% hydro damage bonus, and that is it. It does not give you anything else. I would say the more notable constellations are her C1 and C2, but even then, these are probably one of the worst constellations of any character in the game. I would not suggest you pull for any of her constellation, as they do not increase her base kit by any meaningful amount. For the 4 stars, if you're wishing only for Sangonomiya Kokomi, the 4 stars can be pretty bad. Yanfei gains a little bit of ranking as Kokomi can enable her teams to deal Vaporize, which puts her up to a 4.5, but no more than that, as you're not going to be pulling Kokomi to play her in a Yanfei team. Rosaria can be really good with Kokomi freeze teams, especially in Ayaka freeze teams or Ganyu with Blizzard Strayer. This places Rosaria at a stable 6 out of 10 for this particular banner, and Farazan is completely useless on the Kokomi banner if you're not wishing for Wanderer as well, as she boosts animal damage and Kokomi does not really like animal drivers or animal main DPSs in her team, which puts it to a measly 3 out of 10 since Farazan's potential is still pretty good, but you will not be pulling Farazan to play her with Kokomi. Overall, this is a pretty bad banner. Going further, we're probably going to have one of the worst weapon banners that we have seen in a while. First of all, the choice of 5 stars can be pretty bad, as the donut is pretty bad for Kokomi by itself, as she has other weapon alternatives like the prototype Ember, which is a craftable weapon, as well as Thrilling Tales, which is going to be probably everyone's best in slot for her. On the other hand, we have Tulailula's Remembrance, or the Bell, not to be confused with the Claymore Bell, which is also on this banner, but it is a pretty nice weapon for Wanderer. It is indeed his best in slot. The problem is that there are alternatives that are pretty much just as good. If you want to max out Wanderer, and this is the only thing that is left, you could pull on the weapon banner, but it is definitely not that worth it, considering that there's weapons like Witsith that exists, or other 5-star weapons like Kagura's or Lost Prayers that could be just as good on him. Overall, for the 5 stars, Donut is going to get 2 out of 10 for a best in slot, and the Tulailula's Remembrance is going to get a nice 7.5 out of 10, as there isn't really a lot of other characters that could pretty much use this weapon, unlike the Witsith, which is a very much universal weapon on any DPS catalyst. So overall, pretty bad banner, as if you lose a 50-50 between the 2 on-banner weapons, you may be really disappointed when you get the donut. On the other hand, the 4 stars on this banner are pretty decent, but they could be really better. The Bell is considerably one of the worst weapons in the game, and it deserves a 1 out of 10 rating. The Of Wine and Song ranks pretty badly amongst the other options that you could have for that category, which ranks it at a not that good 3 out of 10. Dragon's Bane is a pretty decent spear for F2P players that increases elemental mastery as well as damage against Pyro or Hydro. which is very nice on characters like Xiangling and Hu Tao, but you can even include Rosaria. Overall, Dragon's Bane gets a 6 out of 10 for a 4-star weapon. Lion's Roar is a attack percent substat weapon that increases damage against Electro and Pyro. It does not have really a lot of units that like to use it. Apart from Kaching, the weapon is still pretty good and deserves a 7 out of 10. Ponius Orbo is going to be the best thing that you can get out of 4 stars on this banner, and this is the only thing that you should be wanting from 4 stars, as it is an excellent weapon to provide energy for your characters and your entire team. It is a solid 10 out of 10 weapon. It does definitely get a lot stronger with refinements, and it is a very strong weapon, just like all the other Favonius variants. As well, it has a energy recharge substat, which fits a lot of support bow users, just like Faruzan or others like Kujasara, Diona, Kole, Goro, even Yellen could be pretty good with it as well. Overall, the 4-star weapons of this banner deserve a very bad rating, as 2 of the weapons are very bad. On the other hand, we have 2 other weapons which are pretty decent, the Dragon's Bane and Lion's Roar, and the last one being the Favonius Warbow, which is probably the best one on this banner. Overall, for the 4 stars, I'd give a very much thumbs down for this banner. For the 5 stars, I'm going to give a thumbs down as well. If you miss, once again, the weapon that you want to, you are going to not be very happy. Overall, I hope that this ranking helped you decide on if you want to pull for these characters or not. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and subscribe for more analysis and rankings for the next upcoming banners. See you!